You know something, Mean Gene?
You're gonna be mine. Woo! He put hard times on Dusty Rhodes and his family.
But the cream will rise to the top, oh yeah.
And you will be excellently executed.
And that's the bottom line, because Stone Cold said so.
Oh yeah.
You are now watching Wrestle Drop on YouTube.
The high reward. Oh!
Let's go back in time to the year 1988 and look at WrestleMania 4. Now, WrestleMania 4 is a pay-per-view or a WrestleMania that has been heavily scrutinized over the years. Was it scrutinized at the time? I don't know. Maybe you guys who lived through that time can let me know your thoughts on it in that moment. But I do think for the large part, it's not a well-loved pay-per-view in 2025. I think the thing that people love is probably Randy Savage finally getting the WWF Championship. I think that is something everyone can agree was a good thing. But how it happened, the situation afterwards, maybe not the greatest of moments. Also, the fact that there were so many meaningless matches, or matches that should have felt important that felt meaningless throughout the card. I don't think that was very helpful as well. Just a side note, WrestleMania 4 was taking place on the same day as the NWA and Jim Crockett Promotions held Clash of the Champions 1 on television. So this was on pay-per-view, Clash of the Champions was on television, and we will be reviewing Clash of the Champions in the next video. So, with that being said, we're at the Trump Plaza in Atlantic City. Mean Gene welcomes us and introduces Gladys Knight to sing the American National Anthem. And as always, we have Gorilla Monsoon and we have Jesse Ventura on commentary. The very first match of the night was a battle royal just to get a whole bunch of people on the card, I guess. As if there wasn't already a whole bunch of people on the card. But this battle royal featured the names of the people like the names of Sam Houston, Ken Patera, Boris Zirkov, Harley Race was in there, Junkyard Dog was in there, Jim Neidhart was in there, Bad News Brown, Bret Hart, Paul Roma, Brian Blair, George Steele, Jim Brunzell, Jacques Rougeau, Ron Bass, Nikolai Volkov, Hillbilly Jim, Danny Davis, Raymond Rougeau, Seeker, Jim Powers. Those were all the names that featured in this battle royal. But let's get into it. So there's a huge trophy up for grabs in this match. That's the first, like a really massive trophy. This thing is 6 foot tall plus. Like I alluded to earlier, is the battle royal really necessary on this card that already has an abundance of matches? I don't think it was necessary, but the crowd were hot for it. Typical battle royal action throughout this match. Sam Houston was the first person to get eliminated in this match. I'm not going to go through every elimination. But yeah, George Steele is a part of the match, but he didn't quite enter the ring yet. I don't even know what happened to him, to be honest. Next thing I knew, he was not at ringside anymore. Like, he was pulling people out from outside after they were basically already eliminated. And then next thing I knew, he wasn't there anymore. So I don't know when he entered and when he got eliminated. So, like, honestly, I have no idea. We finally came down to the final three men, being Bret Hart, JYD, and Bad News Brown. And when I saw this combo, I was like, okay, JYD's probably going to be the one to get the win here just because he's an over babyface at the end of the day. But that's not what happened. So obviously we had Bad News Brown and Bret Hart just attacking JYD, the two heels attacking the face. But JYD fights back and lands his iconic headbutts while like on all fours to both men. But then Hart and Brown continue to team together and eventually eliminate JYD. They then act as if they've both won this trophy. They've like both agreed to win the Battle Royale. There's a little bit of confusion. But then Bad News Brown lands his Insiguri, I think it's called the Ghetto Blaster, on Bret Hart and eliminates him. So did this effectively turn Bret Hart into a face? Or did it just make Bad News Brown a bigger heel than what he was? I think we'll see in the coming months. But I have a feeling this is like a little mini face turn for Bret. And I assume, obviously, Jim Neidhart at the same time. So, Bad News Brown won the Battle Royale. He got the big trophy that was on display before the match. But post-match, Bret Hart is not happy with him. He attacks Bad News Brown, and he attacks the trophy and smashes the trophy. So, at least Bret... That's what I'm thinking. Is this a face turn for Bret Hart? But, again, standard Battle Royale action with, I guess, an interesting finish, which was... appreciated, the fact that it wasn't just someone tossing someone over. There was some thought put into the finish. Bad News winning was great because it's a fresh new face, if I'm being honest. That's getting attention. Like, if JYD won, I would have been like, okay. But it's a new guy actually getting the win because we have not seen him on WWE pay-per-view until now. So, however, we could have done without this match being on the card. I will stress that again. It was not necessary whatsoever, but we got it in the end anyway. So, I gave it a 2.5 rating, which is probably fairly decent for a Battle Royale, if I'm being honest. Slap bang in the middle, average match. We then move on to the first round 1 match of the vacant WWF World Heavyweight Championship. To give a little bit of background, this title was obviously vacant because Ted DiBiase tried to buy it or get the title off of Andre the Giant, who essentially won it from Hulk Hogan, and WWE weren't having this, so they stripped them of the title and put the title up as a vacant title. Ted DiBiase versus Jim Duggan is our first round 1 match of the night, and if you don't know, this is an AWA feud revived. We have even put one of their matches, I think it was, if you guys haven't watched our top 10 matches of the year, listen to this match quickly. I think it was a miner's glove on a pole, steel cage tuxedo match. Yes. Well, that was a top 10 match of, I think, was one of the early 1980 years, between Jim Duggan and, of course, Ted DiBiase in the AWA. So, yeah, this is a revived feud from that. Huge pop for Jim Duggan as he makes his entrance. He's really got himself really over in the WWF. And this turns into a brawl early on, which Jim Duggan gets the better of by sending DiBiase over the top rope. Jim Duggan then lands a huge clothesline, which DiBiase sells like rent is due. He's actually a fantastic bumper. I never really noticed it about Ted DiBiase, but I looked at it specifically in this match, and he's actually a fantastic bumper. Jim Duggan runs in, and DiBiase gets his boot up, and this allows him to take the advantage. Jim Duggan then catches DiBiase with a punch as DiBiase dives from the top rope, and that completely changes the momentum of the match. Andre, who's obviously a ringside, grabs the leg of Duggan and gave him a shot, which was right in front of the referee, so I don't understand how that was allowed. But anyway, that allowed Ted DiBiase to land a little standing diving punch and get the victory over Jim Duggan. Why this wasn't a disqualification, I don't know, because the ref clearly saw what Andre did, but nothing we could do about that now. I think that was a misstep on whoever's side there, the referee or Andre. One of them shouldn't have been doing what they were doing in that moment. The winner, Ted DiBiase, he moves on to the next round. This was nothing compared to the AWA matches that they've had in the past, which, like I mentioned, even made it into a top 10 matches of the year. But it was okay. That served its purpose. Nothing bad. Andre getting involved without any referee distraction or anything seemed really silly, like I mentioned. The match was shorter than 5 minutes, therefore did not get a rating. Let's move on to the very next match. We had Don Muraco versus Dino Bravo, obviously in another round 1 match for the vacant championship. This is just a pure power versus power match, with Muraco starting off hot with a power slam, and then he tried to do some sort of like corner splash move, but failed miserably. I was like, oh my gosh, is this the type of match we're going to get from these guys? But they sort of fixed it up from there, so it wasn't too bad. And Dino Bravo took the advantage and lands a gut-wrench suplex onto Don Muraco. Dino Bravo kicks up at Don Muraco at one point, sending him into the ropes where he gets tied up, I think, by his neck. We then get a nice pile driver from Dino, but Don Muraco kicks out. Why did you do a pile driver, and why did you let him kick out of a pile driver? I've said this before. I hate that. I really hate that. Because there'll be weaker moves that finish a match, but you drop someone on their head and they can kick out. Anyway, we then get a flying forearm by Don Muraco, but he catches the ref by accident. Dino then lands a side suplex and goes for the pin, but the ref calls a DQ. The winner is Don Muraco. And you're thinking, but Don Muraco hit the referee. No. Dino Bravo apparently, or not apparently, we saw it with our own eyes, pulled the ref in front of Don Muraco and allowed the ref to take the brunt of the attack from Don Muraco. And that is why the ref DQ'd Dino Bravo. Short match, unnecessary DQ finish in my opinion. It just felt like a little bit of overbooking, if I'm being honest. No rating again, sub 5 minute match. You're not going to get too many ratings on this card because a lot of matches went sub 5 minutes. But with that being said, we then moved on to one of the best matches of the night. Greg Valentine versus Ricky Steamboat in another round 1 match for the vacant championship. This match went more than 5 minutes, so we can clap for that finally. That was cringe. Steamboat makes an entrance with his kid. who cannot be even 6 months old. But that was a really nice moment. Commentary team just talking about how big this kid is. I don't know why, but anyway. Then we get a quick start from Steamboat as he hit his patented arm drag onto Greg Valentine. Valentine later on sends Steamboat over the top, but he skins the cat and drops kick Valentine in the back. Valentine takes control and begins working down on Steamboat, but eventually though Steamboat flips out of a suplex and rams Valentine into the corner. Very back and forth with neither man really holding the advantage for very long in this match. Valentine then looks for the figure 4 but then gets kicked away by Ricky Steamboat. Steamboat then lands a flying back elbow and goes to the top rope and lands a chop to the head for a 2 count. Steamboat goes to the top again and lands a crossbody, but Valentine rolls it over, grabs the tights, and gets the victory over Ricky Steamboat. This was, I think, Ricky Steamboat's last appearance for the WWF in this year. He then would go on to, I'm not sure if he took a break first, but then he would go back to the NWA, and then hopefully towards next year we get those Ric Flair and Steamboat matches. Or not hopefully, it happens. But this was his last match for the WWF at this time. The winner, Greg the Hammer Valentine. This was a decent back and forth match between two equals in the ring. Both former IC champions. They made them look like equals. Like I mentioned, no man was necessarily better than the other, which was made for a good match. I gave this match a 3-star rating. Enjoyable, fast-paced, hard-hitting, good stuff. First good match of the card. One of the better matches on the card. We then get another round 1 match with Randy Savage versus Butch Reed. This match went, I think, just over 5 minutes. So to get into the match, Butch Reed uses his size and power to take the advantage early on. Savage goes for a suplex, but Butch Reed reverses it into one of his own. And then Butch Reed continues to dominate the match. And I can already see the story for the night for Randy Savage. That is going to be Randy having to fight back, fight against the odds the whole night over and over, and then eventually he gets his crowning moments. That's what I can see already happening from match 1, which is good that they established that early. Savage fights back with some quick strikes, but shortly after, Butch Reed hits a clothesline, putting him down to the mat again. Savage tosses Butch Reed off the turnbuckle after he got distracted by Elizabeth and quickly landed his elbow drop for the win. But you could really see the emphasis on him trying to get that done as quickly as possible. Winner was Randy Savage. Very short match, just past the 5-minute mark though. It's clear that the whole night is going to be about Savage taking a beating but defying the odds and getting the victory in the end. Rating, I gave the match a rating of 2 stars. We then had another round 1 match with Bam Bam Bigelow taking on the one-man gang. 2 big meaty men slapping meat, in the words of Big E. This is exactly what it was. Doesn't mean it was great, but it's what it was. One-man gang takes it to Bam Bam from the beginning with some big strikes, but Bam Bam avoids a corner attack and lands a splash in the middle of the ring to one-man gang. This might be some of the worst selling I've ever seen from both men, specifically one-man gang, but it is what it is. Slick pulls the rope down, sending Bam Bam over the top rope with a pretty nasty bump in my opinion. Both men then fight it out at ringside, but they come back in and the ref calls it a count-out victory for the one-man gang. 2 minutes, just a 2-minute match with some striking and some terrible selling. Not much more can say, just 2 big meaty men slapping meat, but not in any good ways. No rating for this match as it only lasted 2 minutes. Let's move on to, I don't know if I want to move on to this match, guys. Guys. You hear a match between Jake Roberts and Rick Rude going 15 minutes. You think this should be good. This should be one of the matches of the night. I was wrong. Boy, was I wrong. 1.5 stars for this match. I'm telling you that off the bat, and that is me being generous. That is me being very generous, okay? So to start off the match, there's a lot of attention onto Rick Rude's tights as per usual. He's wearing purple tights with like a face on the back. Typical Rick Rude stuff, but a lot of attention on it by commentary team for whatever reason. I think they're infatuated with his ass or something. But anyway, pretty even start from both men with both men getting moments of offense. Jake Roberts locks in a wrist lock, which lasts for way too long. Jake then looks for the DDT early, but Rude is quick to escape and roll out of the ring. Jake Roberts goes for a knee lift, but Rude gets out the way and lets him take the advantage. Rick Rude holds onto a headlock for way too long as well. And then Rick Rude lands some strikes followed by a clothesline for a 2 count. Then I think, okay, this is going to start picking up. But nope, they're working a very slow style. And commentary has mentioned the 15-minute time limit multiple times, so it's clear where they're going with this. It's clearly going to a time limit draw. You can tell often when matches are going to a time limit draw. Rick Rude lands a diving punch from the top rope for a 2 count. And then Jake Roberts fights out of a chin lock, and the crowd honestly do not care one bit for that. Jake Roberts makes a comeback with some strikes and a backdrop, and the crowd wakes up a little bit at this point. Jake goes for the DDT, but Rude rams Jake into the corner. Rick Rude goes for a pin with his feet on the ropes, but the bell rings mid-pin. In other words, they had reached their time limit. Time limit draw was the result. The story of this match was essentially Jake Roberts trying to land the DDT, but Rick Rude seemed to have an answer for it every single time throughout the match. This was long, lackluster. The crowd seemed disengaged. The crowd seemed like they didn't care. Unless there was a moment where it looked like the DDT wasn't going to come into play, they did not care. It was clear from the start that they were going long and slow and going for the time limit draw. Neither man qualified for the next round, and that ended up causing a bye for someone and made it all confusing. Rating 1.5 star, like I mentioned earlier. Disappointing match, really disappointing. This was, when I looked at the card, this was one of the matches I was keen for, and it was lackluster to the most. I think this is the second Rick Rude match that I haven't enjoyed in back-to-back pay-per-views. That is a worry. Let's move on to a match that's not part of the tournament, but just happening because there's apparently a grudge match, or a blood feud, or a grudge feud, or whatever you call it, between these two men. I didn't feel that they showed that in this match at all. But anyway, another power versus power match between Ultimate Warrior and Hercules. Hercules tries to cheap shot Warrior, but he just no-sells it and lays in some strikes of his own. Hercules then has to clothesline Warrior multiple times just to get him down. So Warrior's already with his no-selling bag here. Eventually, the Warrior punches Hercules in the corner with the crowd counting along, but afterwards Hercules lands a atomic drop, giving him the advantage. Eventually, though, what happens is Hercules locks in the full Nelson, but he doesn't lock the hands. So Warrior goes towards the turnbuckle, pushes them both off it into like a suplex position, but both men's shoulders are all on the mat. What happens is Warrior puts his shoulder up just before the 3 counts, and Hercules' shoulders are both still on the mat. Therefore, Warrior earns the victory. Last time I saw this finish performed was Starrcade 1984, and it didn't work then, and in my opinion, it didn't work here. So that's what I'm saying. Ultimate Warrior with the win. They built this up as a grudge match, but it did not feel that way whatsoever. It just felt like another match. Warrior got the quick win, but didn't seem to dominate in victory yet. He was still no-selling, so that didn't make sense to me. Like, the psychology was mixed between what they really want to do here. And then another match that was not in the tournaments, that felt unimportant, that probably wasn't needed to start, and it was less than 5 minutes as well. More reason not to have it. No rating for this match, but I wouldn't rate it very high if it was past 5 minutes. Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant in a quarterfinal match within the WWF Championship Tournament. Last time we saw these guys was on the channel, for that matter, was WrestleMania 3. Of course, they had a match at Saturday night's main event, which caused all of this situation, caused this issue that we're facing at WrestleMania. The match starts off hot as Hogan dives in and Andre just attacks him straight away. Hogan tries fighting back with some big forearms and then bashes DiBiase and Andre together because DiBiase climbs on top of the apron. Andre gets tied up in the ropes, but instead of taking the advantage, Hogan decides to just play to the crowd and take his shirts off. Stupid. Hit the man while he's tied up in the ropes. It's not like you haven't done heelish things. It's not like you're going to not do heelish things later in the night. So don't give me that excuse. Anyway, I'm getting worked up here. I'm getting heated. Hogan's frustrating me, and this was nearly 40 years ago. Hogan looks to land an elbow drop, but gets caught by Andre in a chokehold. Hogan then fights out of a trap hold later on by Andre and clotheslines him in the corner. Virgil then distracts the ref, and Ted DiBiase introduces a chair, which Hogan gets a hold of and attacks Andre with, and then vice versa for that matter. Andre also attacks Hogan, and then the ref rings the bell and calls for a double disqualification. The fighting did continue, and Hogan did slam Andre. The crowd didn't care as much as they did at WrestleMania 3, that is for sure. Probably because of the crappy finish that we got. But yeah, I don't understand why it's double DQ. Hogan hit him first. Hogan hit him first right in front of the ref's eyes. Should have been a DQ win for Andre if they're going to finish it that way. So there was probably a better way to get the double DQ. Hogan then celebrating, even though he just got eliminated, is so stupid. I don't understand it. You're not going to win the title now, my guy. You should not be happy. You should be frustrated. The match was high action, high paced, which is surprising for an Andre versus Hogan match. But Hogan not winning was great in my opinion. I'm not going to lie. I knew Hogan didn't win, but I still popped when he didn't win. So, yeah, although Hogan... Look, guys, my hate for Hogan, or not even hate for Hogan, my criticisms for Hogan is just a matter of wanting to see fresh faces. That's all. I'm not bringing other stuff into it, maybe, but at the moment, it's just me wanting to see fresh faces in that title scene, which I know doesn't really happen, but it happens. So, with that being said, we rated that match 2.25 stars, as it also barely made it over the 5-minute mark, allowing us to rate it, but the finish was terrible. The action leading up to it was actually quite exciting, but the finish was just not it. We then had Don Muraco versus Ted DiBiase in the quarterfinals of the vacant WWF Championship Tournament. So Don Muraco takes it to Ted DiBiase early on by smashing him into the turnbuckles and then landing a nice power slam to follow that up. Don Muraco then dominates Ted DiBiase with all types of offense, and Ted had no answer for this. Eventually though, Ted DiBiase pulls Muraco into the turnbuckle and is quick to take advantage. DiBiase lands a clothesline followed by a knee lift to Don Muraco, and then DiBiase lands a power slam and a backwards elbow drop, but misses, and Muraco fires back. DiBiase hangs Muraco up on the ropes, almost like a clothesline on the ropes, and then pins Don Muraco for the victory, sending him into the finals. The finish did come out of nowhere. Ted DiBiase is the winner. A decent back and forth match between both men, but it was short and felt unimportant considering this man would go to the finals. Because Andre and Hogan was a double DQ, that meant there was a bye in the semi-final round. And that meant Ted DiBiase went straight to the finals from this match. And they did not make it feel important whatsoever. I think that was a criticism for this match. I gave the match a rating of 2.5 stars. I just want to put it out there. If you guys are wondering why these ratings are all so low, these matches were barely over 5 minutes. If they did go over 5 minutes, they were barely over 5 minutes. Or we had one like Rick Rude and Jake the Snake that went 15 minutes of nothing. So that is why the ratings are fairly low for these matches. Just putting that out there. We then had Greg Valentine versus Randy Savage in another quarterfinal match. And you know what? I was hoping this match would go longer than what it did, because these are two workers that can work. And for what the time they had, they did work. They worked quite well. Neither man gets the advantage early on, but they do start off really hot. So neither man can really get the better of the other man. Valentine lands a nice shoulder breaker on Randy Savage before tossing him over the rope to the outside, where Valentine slams him face first into the barricade. So Randy Savage continues to take the abuse, and this continues to tell the underdog story that he is facing throughout the night. We then get a vertical suplex by Valentine, followed by a backbreaker for a 2 count onto Randy Savage. Savage then fights back with a back elbow and a power slam, followed by a double axe handle for a near fall. Valentine then goes for another suplex, but Randy reverses it into one of his own. After some back and forth, Valentine goes for the figure 4, but Randy Savage reverses it into a roll-up pin and gets the victory. The winner is, of course, Randy Savage. A decent little match, which I wish got more time, but I understand why it didn't. At this point, I can't be complaining about certain matches being on the card, but me wanting more time for other matches. Although, if those matches weren't on the card, perhaps we could have got an extra 5 minutes here. That's all I'm saying. It was barely over 5 minutes. Great selling by Randy Savage, as he's one step closer to becoming the world champion. I gave this match a rating of 2.75 stars. I enjoyed this match. I do wish it went on longer, like I've said multiple times now, but it was good for what it was. We then had a match between Honky Tonk Man, the current Intercontinental Championship, and Brutus Beefcake for the title. So let's get into it. There was a competitive elbow and collar tie-up to get things going, but Honky Tonk eventually gets the advantage with some strikes. Brutus, though, does land an atomic drop, which led to some ridiculous selling by Honky Tonk Man. cartoonish stuff. This match felt really cartoonish, over the top for no reason. I read you what has happened to the Intercontinental Championship, because throughout this retro timeline, the Intercontinental Champions have been Steamboat, Randy Savage, Greg Valentine, Tito Santana, and now we've got Honky Tonk Man doing cartoonish selling in the middle of the ring with a guy who walks around with big hedge clippers or whatever you call those, and he wants to cut people's hair. That is frustrating. That is really frustrating. Brutus then with a leapfrog and a jumping knee strike, leaving Honky Tonk Man rolling out the ring looking for a breather. After some back and forth, Honky takes advantage and looks to land the shake, rattle, and roll, but instead goes for a knee lift. I don't know why. That looked very weird moment. He then goes for it again, but this time looks to land it, but Brutus holds onto the ropes and stops the move from actually happening. Brutus then locks in a sleeper hold, but Jimmy Hart hits the ref with a megaphone from behind and knocks him out silly. Brutus then thinks he's won, but realizes that he hasn't and targets Jimmy Hart, and then finds a pair of scissors and cuts Jimmy Hart's hair at ringside. So instead of trying to win the Intercontinental Championship, you're more concerned with cutting Jimmy Hart's hair at ringside. You're more concerned with that than actually winning the Intercontinental Championship. What a way to bury the title, in my opinion. The match is then decided as a DQ win for Brutus Beefcake. The winner, Brutus Beefcake, via DQ. He does not get the title. This was just a cartoonish match which buried the importance of the Intercontinental Championship, in my opinion. The finish was confusing for us, and commentary didn't even know what to do or what to say. People in attendance were confused as hell as well. They popped, they found it entertaining, but when it was time to do to determine what the actual finish was, confusing. 1.25 stars for this match. I did not enjoy it. That was the worst match of the night. Even more worse than Rick Rude versus Jake Roberts. That was bad. We then move on to Koko B. Ware and the British Bulldogs versus Bobby Heenan and the Islanders. So, Bobby Heenan in a wrestling ring. I love Bobby Heenan. I do think some of his manager work, especially when he gets involved, is great. But did we need this match? Or could we have just gotten a banger between the Bulldogs and the Islanders? That's what I'm here for. So Bobby Heenan is wearing a heavily padded outfit, which is like those outfits that people wear to train dogs for, like dogs to attack someone, so that when they bite them, it doesn't hurt them. So it's very clear what was going to happen later on in the night. But it was good because it they sold the story of him actually just wanting to protect himself. Probably from Matilda, the Bulldog's dog, and probably from any moves that anybody does on him. So Dynamite Kid starts off hot, taking it to the Islanders with backdrops and hip tosses. Davey Boy and Haku both go for a crossbody, but Davey Boy comes out on top. We then get Davey Boy landing a military press slam on Tama, which was pretty neat. The Islanders work over Davey Boy and isolate him, but this doesn't last long as Koko B. Ware is tagged in, and he lands a double headlock takeover onto both the Islanders. Bobby Heenan gets tagged in while Dynamite is already down, so he just stomps and pounds on Dynamite until he tries to fight back, and then Heenan runs away and tags out. We then get a power slam followed by an attempted middle rope splash by Tama, but Dynamite Kid gets his knees up. Heenan gets tagged in while Koko B. Ware was down, and again just kicks and punches the man while he's down. But this time, Heenan gets caught and sent into the ring post by Koko B. Ware. The Islanders power slam Koko down and then lift and splash Heenan on top of Koko B. Ware. He has no idea where he is, and that gets them the victory. The winners were the Heenan family, so the Islanders and Bobby Heenan. Post-match, they chase down Heenan with Matilda the dog, but the cameraman slips and falls and missed the action shot of Matilda actually getting to Heenan. But then we eventually see Matilda on Heenan, biting him or whatever, and then I think Davey Boy or Dynamite Kid was kind of like moving Matilda around. Heenan got attacked. What else can we say? Big pop from the crowd when Heenan got attacked. Of course, he's not well liked. So, yeah, pretty back and forth match, but most of the action felt unimportant, if I'm being honest. And why did Koko B. Ware have to take the pin from Heenan, of all people? I don't understand that. 2-star rating for this match. We are now into the final 3 matches of the night, and we have a semi-final match between One Man Gang and Randy Savage. So, Randy Savage gets overpowered in the collar and elbow tie-up, but uses his speed and athleticism to get the better of One Man Gang. One Man Gang catches Savage with some big strikes, which sends Randy Savage straight to the mat, and he begins working over and dominating Randy Savage. We then get a power slam and elbow drop from One Man Gang, which gets near falls, but Randy Savage eventually fights back after a missed splash. Savage then lands a double axe handle from the top rope to the outside, and then Savage tries to slam One Man Gang, but it backfires. Behind the ref's back, One Man Gang uses Slick's cane on Savage, which the ref finally sees and calls for a disqualification. The winner, Randy Savage, via DQ. The final will now be Randy Savage versus Ted DiBiase. That is confirmed. And this obviously continued the story, like I've mentioned, all video of Randy Savage fighting through all kinds of adversity to get to the final. For the match itself, short match, no rating, just a big man dominating a little man until the big man was stupid enough to get himself disqualified. That was the story. We then move on to the WWF World Tag Team Championship match, where Strikeforce, the current champions of Rick Martel and Tito Santana, take on Demolition, which is Axe and Smash. So, Smash starts off the match as his name suggests. He smashes Rick Martel over and over, sending him down to the mat. Smash then catches Rick Martel, and Tito Santana hits a drop kick, causing all four men to then come in the ring and start fighting it out. Strikeforce is surprisingly keeping up with Demolition in this match, which honestly I thought was going to be basically like a glorified job at this point, but it wasn't. Demolition cut the ring in half and start dominating Tito Santana, working on him and isolating him. We then get a vertical suplex by Smash, which should have been a 3 count because it looked like Tito Santana forgot to kick out, but the ref never made the 3 count. Awkward moments. Luckily the crowd didn't really seem to see it. That was a big mistake on their part, which honestly hampered the match a little bit. Tito Santana lands a flying forearm into Axe and goes for the tag and gets it this time, finally getting the hot tag. So then Rick Martel comes in, lands multiple drop kicks to Demolition, and goes for the Boston Crab. Santana then does everything in his power to stop interference, but Smash manages to use Fuji's cane on Martel, and Demolition get the victory. Demolition are the new WWF World Tag Team Champions. Exciting match with a great hot tag comeback by Rick Martel, which was certainly the highlights of the match for me. I love a good hot tag in tag team wrestling. It's the best part about any tag team match, and if it doesn't have one, I kind of feel like underwhelmed. I expected Demolition to win convincingly considering their size and power, but apparently Strikeforce was still valued as a top team, and they competed with Demolition here. I give the match a 3-star rating. Could have been slightly higher if not for that botched pinfall. Then finally move on to our main event. Randy Savage versus Ted DiBiase for the vacant WWF World Heavyweight Championship. After a long night of tournament matches, we finally get these two men into the finals, and let's get into the match. So from early on, we can already see the influence that Andre the Giant, who is at ringside, will have on this match as he grabs Savage's leg to trip him up. We then get some nice chain wrestling, drop downs, and leapfrogs between both men, but then again, Andre gets involved and the crowd starts chanting for Hogan at this point. Just subtle chants for Hogan. DiBiase then takes advantage as the long night of wrestling for Randy Savage begins to show. DiBiase looks for a sunset flip, but Randy Savage stops it and lands a clothesline for a near fall. DiBiase once again slowly weighs down Randy Savage, but he refuses to quit and lands a running elbow and sends DiBiase out of the ring. Macho Man looks for his double axe handle from the top rope, but Andre the Giant stands in the way, stopping Randy Savage from doing anything to Ted DiBiase. Macho Man then goes over to speak to Ms. Elizabeth as she then runs off into the back, and the crowd start popping because they know what is coming. Hulk Hogan. Hogan comes out with Miss Elizabeth and the crowd pops, making it even now. Randy Savage has someone at ringside that can combat Andre the Giant. As much as the crowd popped for Hogan, in my opinion, and as much as they wanted to see him, it already feels like the Hogan show, and I'm not sure I like that. So we get a moment even where like Ted DiBiase is landing a nice gut-wrench suplex, but Hogan's head is just in the way of this camera shot because they're so focused on having Hulk Hogan involved in this main event. Randy Savage goes for the elbow drop, but DiBiase gets out the way and locks in his sleeper hold. The ref then gets distracted by Andre the Giant, and Hogan smashes DiBiase with a chair, allowing Savage to land the elbow drop and get the win. Yes, Hulk Hogan cheated. to allow Randy Savage to win. The babyfaces cheated to allow Savage to win. I don't understand why they did that. To this day, I don't understand why Randy Savage couldn't win by himself. All Hogan needed to do was nullify Andre the Giant, and that could allow Savage to beat Ted DiBiase on his own. That's what she needed to do. Hogan can get involved with Andre, not with Savage, or not with Ted DiBiase, because he basically won the match for Randy Savage. Randy Savage never legitimately won that title that day. And that is the problem. As a babyface, that is the problem. The finish was terrible. Hogan cheating is the dumbest outcome possible. When I watched that for the first time years ago now, I was shocked at the stupidity behind that decision. And today, I'm still shocked at the stupidity behind that decision. But Randy Savage got his moment, which is amazing. Good for Randy Savage. He's a WWF World Champion, and well-deserved, honestly, especially the night that he's had, well-deserved. But then even in celebrations, it felt like the Hulk Hogan show. It felt like Hulk Hogan was trying to take the spotlight once again, which was disappointing. Really disappointing. I gave the match 2.75 stars. Could have been higher. Should have been higher. But Hulk Hogan ruined it and ruined the day once again. That was WrestleMania 4, a very, very long pay-per-view with a lot of matches, a lot of meaningless matches, a lot of the same kind of spots and the same kind of moments happening over and over again, finally leading to this moment, and they botched the moment. They botched it by having Hulk Hogan cheat. So that was WrestleMania 4. I'm sure this is nostalgic for a lot of people, and they're going to tell me they really enjoyed it. And that, like I always say, is fair enough, and I'm not going to argue with that. Because when we eventually get to the mid-2000s, I'm going to tell you guys I love this stuff, even though it might have been stupid. That's all I'm going to say. So nostalgia is a real thing, and honestly, I'm not going to argue with nostalgia. So that was WrestleMania 4. I did not enjoy it that much. I still think WrestleMania 3 is probably my favorite WrestleMania up until this point, but Randy Savage winning is an awesome moment. So with that being said, we'll see you guys next time, and take care. Peace.